What's going on, everybody? James Jackson here, back again with another video. I made a promise at the beginning of the year that things were going to be more of an educational dialogue instead of just going on to like reviews, especially camera reviews, because you can get information on specs and everything. I want to commit to that new change. The reviews are going to be, again, they're not going to be much different, but they're going to be somewhat different. So instead, I want to try to use these reviews to have more of a dialogue and discussion instead of just talking about how great the camera is. Because at this point, I feel like I'm repeating a lot of things, either that I've already done or things other YouTubers have done. And I don't want to sit here and regurgitate and waste a lot of you guys' time. So I'm going to have more of, my reviews are going to be more of a discussion on certain things. Like, I think the dialogue will be more about, okay, what is the use cases of Micro Four Thirds in a world that's transitioning more into full frame in terms of film and video content. I think that will be sort of more of interest, especially those that maybe you guys looking at the G8.6 or maybe have considered the G8.6 or another Micro Four Thirds camera. And you may be of interest to see where would something like this actually fit and where certain cameras may benefit that way. And I think that's sort of the way I'm going to go in terms of camera reviews and reviews in general. It's sort of like going more up to how this, and that's sort of what leads into this discussion, because we're going to talk about these guys over here. And what we're going to be talking about is, let me see if I can get myself here. These guys are the Irix lineup. These are the Irix Cine lenses. I have made purchases of these over time. I started off with the 15 and then I got the 45, and recently I just got the 150 macro. And I wanted to sort of talk more about lens compositions, especially given the fact that I just brought up Micro Four Thirds, because the idea is that some people want to know, well, okay, you're in terms of cropping, it's like you're just losing field of view, and it's not really just that. We're also talking about lens composition. So yeah, and that's sort of kind of the basis, because there's, in terms of storytelling, in terms of visual things that can sort of, that you can use to give thoughts and give feelings towards your audience, can really be affected by the glass. As much as we all go crazy about cameras, the glass is what's going to determine, you know, you as a content creator or you as a filmmaker. The glass gives you your identity. The light, how you light your scenes, give you your identity. It's not really the cameras, because every camera can pretty much do everything, but what type of glass you use, what type of lighting and your lighting setup will have more of a dramatic effect on your ultimate video content than necessarily the camera itself. And that's kind of where I wanted to go to, because I was finding myself in situations where I was using lenses, especially still lenses, where I'll have one maybe Sigma and another Canon, and they give so very different looks. And I found myself spending a lot more time trying to match them up, whereas going something with more lines of Cine lenses, even if you're on the same, in terms of stills, even if you're on basically the same lineup, like if you have Sigma art lenses, the color space between each of those is very different. And that's where a lot of cinema glass, especially the more premium ones like the Canons, the Cooks, the Arri Master Primes, they're all taking a lot of time and a lot of energy to get the color coding match correctly, because in film production, it's all about speed and efficiency. So whether if it's there shooting or if you're in post, you want to try to streamline as much things as humanly possible. If I was to hold the 45 and the 150 and I just hold them up, as you can see, the gears are lined up almost perfectly. So now if you go using these and you got to follow focus, you really don't have to adjust the follow focus. You simply have to just take it down, put on the new cap, put it on, and everything is back to gravy. Another great thing is all of these have a 180-degree turn on all of them. So you don't have to even so if you have, say, a wireless follow focus system like one of those Nucleus systems, you shouldn't have to recalibrate unless as long as you put it sort of at infinity, you can pretty much go ahead and basically you don't have to recalibrate anything over again. And that's one of the benefits of having something like these, where it's just that consistency. And one of the things I really would like, and why I went with the Irix, is because of their uniqueness. Now, what is this uniqueness that I am talking about? Well, here are the three that I have. And by the way, I'll go more into details about the specific use cases for each one of those. But this one here is the Irix 45 T1.5. This is the 15mm T2.6. And this is the 150mm T3 macro. Irix is a very, very interesting lens development. They started off as still glass developers, and then they sort of moved into a Cine line. And while a lot of these are rehouses of their stills, there's still that consistency. So when you put this on one camera and you put the lens on another, if you have the same camera basically, so if you have like two Panasonic GH6, or you have two Sony cameras like A7S3s, or two C70s, or two R5s, you get the gist. You put these two, put one of these lenses on one and another on the other, you will get the same consistency across all of them. And that really helps with just driving things forward. But it's not just that. Even if you're not using the same camera, it still helps because it takes one variable out in terms of color correcting. So now you can use something like, say, Cinematch, and you want to say, let's say you're shooting on a C70 and then another's on a Red Komodo, or we'll go even more consumer based. Maybe you have an R6 and then you have an A7S3. So two very different looking cameras. But with these lenses, you can basically take out the variable of the lens from your whole experience, and then you can use something like Cinematch and match it to one. So either the Canon to the Sony, or the Sony to the Canon, you get the gist. And you can get a consistent look. So efficiency and speed is a key thing for all cinema lenses. But with the Irix lenses, it's also uniqueness, and it's also amazing image quality. First of all, these things are all made out of metal, and these things are built like tanks. They're also fully weather sealed, so you can take these if you got it in a shower. If you're dealing with a rain shower, you can use these out without worrying about too much damage. And these things are incredibly sharp. All of them are designed to render out in 8K. And you know, when we talk about the 150, you will definitely see the sharpness. But the lineup has had some critiques, and justifiable critiques, and these are things that you really, really should be aware of if you're going to go with these lenses. For start-offs, one of them is in the build quality designs. Now, as you can see here, I got lens caps on these, but this is not how these originally, especially these three. Originally, these lenses came with these little capsules, which if you've seen the reviews of this lens lineup, these things are garbage, and I'm here to say that these are like the most annoying parts of it. And I'm really was confused on why they put this out in the first place, and I get why, because this whole thing is a magnetic. The front part is a magnetic, so you can just basically put it here. But the problem is that easily comes right off. So even if you don't intend to pull it up by the lens caps, which you shouldn't do that with any camera to begin with, but especially if you got, like, say, the lens hood and the cap, you may try to pull it up that way, and one of these can get loose. But Irix has remedied this, and they have built lens caps, and the beauty is they're all 95mm. So even if you don't have the specific Signia number, you can always just get one that is available and just put some tape and just say the proper focal length number. But these are great, and one little critique I will say here is that these things it's a plus and a minus And these things are sealed tight. And I mean tight. Like right now, I'm like really forcing myself to take this lens cap off. In fact, I'm already going to have to use my fingers to pull this bad boy off. Let's get it here. Woo! That took a lot of energy and a lot of force. But I will say I take that as a plus and a negative. It's a positive because you don't have to worry about anything sort of creeping in. It is sealed tight. It's just the downside is that it does take a lot of force to take it off. So especially with the 150, I would definitely recommend just make sure you got some self-time where maybe you don't have to pull it all the way in once production begins, but give itself some just like a little breather. So just, I'll say just like put a little bit of a gap and then it comes right off. So don't pull it all the way in once you've like got this out. But when you're traveling, you can slide it all the way in, and these bad boys are sealed tight. I will say this is not necessarily a negative, but this is something that you should be aware of. The focal lengths on these, a lot of these have a lot of pull, particularly the 45. It takes, with the 45, it takes a serious amount of pull to turn this. And keep in mind, this is 180 degree focal length. So especially with the 45, you will definitely, if you're using a wireless follow focus system, you will definitely want to make sure that you are using like a powerful motor, something like the Nucleus M, not the Nano. It's the Nano does work, but it gets inconsistent with calibrating it. So I would definitely say go with the Nucleus M if you're going to go with something like one of Tilta's follow focus systems. Or if you're going to just use something like a straight up manual one, just be mindful it does take a lot of, it gives a lot of torque in order to turn it. But that's mainly for the 45. I've noticed the 150 and the 15 have, they're a lot smoother. Though I will say the 150 does have, I wonder if you guys hear this. You hear that sort of gaps, hear that? So that may be something you may want to be considering if you're doing sound. But with the 150, I'll talk about this. You're probably not going to be using this on a lot of things that requires very critical sound or maybe a lot of pulling and pulling. And that's because of the image quality, which we'll get to right now. In terms of image quality, again, all of these lenses are tack sharp. And but I will say, depending on the ones you will get, the use case may be either very specific or niche, or something that may be more universal. So right now they have 6 in the lineup of Cines. They have an 11, the 15 that you see here. They have a 21, a 30, the 45 that you see here, and the 150 macro. I will say that the 21, the 30, and the 45 are going to be your go-to lenses for like mainly everyday uses. Those are going to be the lenses that you're going to be using a lot more. Oh, by the way, if I didn't mention this already, these are all built for full frame. So if you got a A7S III, you got an R5, you got a C500, a Red V Raptor, these are all going to be great with those types of cameras. Or if you got something like what I have right now, which is the C70 with the speed booster, they do really well, especially with that speed booster where you get an additional stop of light, which is very, very helpful when we get to the macro. But yeah, in terms of I would say right now, the 45 is going to be probably my main go-to when I'm like everyday use cases. And I like that fact that it's 45 and it's not 50. Again, when we're talking about lenses, we are trying to find unique characteristics. And having just that 5mm focal difference, which to a lot of people may not seem like a big deal, it does give a very different look, especially when you got something, a camera that is built for this, a full frame camera, a full frame cinema camera, because you will really see the difference in terms of compression. And that's one of the things I really want to again bring up when it comes to cropping. When it comes to cropping, yes, you could shoot something on a Super 35 and pull back and get essentially somewhat of a same field of view, but what you don't get is the same compression as a full frame. And that can be a huge difference in terms of the look you're trying to get, which is always one of the things when something like, say, a Micro Four Thirds camera, and you like, say, the GH5, or we'll even talk about the newly released GH6. Yes, you could get something like a 10 to 25 Lumix 1.7 lens, and yes, you will get like a 20 to 50 equivalent field of view focal length. But what you don't get is the same compression. It's not the same compression as a 50, because even though it's cropped in, how the images either stretch or compress, you know, it's very different depending on the focal length. For example, the 15. This is a very specific lens that I only use for very specific shots. This is where I want to really sort of establish a scene. And the reason why is because on a full frame focal length millimeter camera, this thing is super wide and you really see how it stretches the image. It's almost to the point of distracting. But if you understand your scenes, if you got something like maybe it's an architect where you're looking directly up at a building, or you got something where it's like you got some lines forming it, it's a really dope lens. How you set your framing is going to be critical with this lens, because if you don't get your framing right, this lens can really, really bring you down. But if you set your framing right, this lens can make some of the most amazing and unique and cool looking shots. Now, I will say this, if you're shooting on Super 35, I think the focal length is workable because you don't get that much distortion on a Super 35. So I would say maybe if you're shooting on a Super 35 camera, you can probably use this a little bit more in day-to-day use cases, especially if you want that wide field of view. But even then, like, when it's just so close and it will stretch everything. But it's great if you want to get landscapes. I think it's great for landscapes. I think it's great for architecture. I think it's great for really, like, you really want to show the elongation of a scene. And then of course the 45 is closer again to that 50. You get that normal compression, which sort of more of what the human eye will see. So that's why a lot of this is probably the most use case. But then there is something like the 150 macro. And again, I gotta stress this. This is a very specific use case. You will not be using this lens on any gimbal. Now, it's not the fact that it's heavy. It's not. In fact, this lens is actually the lightest of the three here. I think the 45 is the heaviest, and then it's really close between the 15 and the 150, but the 115 is slightly lighter. But what makes it saying unique is because, again, it's a macro lens. It's a 1-to-1 macro lens. And it takes only the slightest movement. Especially if you're going really, really on that 1-to-1 and really super close macro, it takes only the slightest movement to throw something out of focus. However, if you nail the focus, holy crap. This is what I call the chef's kiss lens. This is that signature. This is the lens, and this is why I got it and why I'm continuing to use it, because when you want to get that one shot that really just signifies that, just you get that feeling of, if nothing else, I got that shot. This is sort of the lens, especially if you want to really blow out and really just get some super sharp, super textures, because the detail that this renders out, even on something like the C70, which is only a 4K it's a 4K image camera. It's an 8 megapixel camera. Even then, it renders out really, really sharp images. It's gorgeous. Now, and then when you put this with something like a higher resolution, like maybe the GH6, or maybe something like the R5C with its 8K capabilities, when you put 8K on this, ooh, this is definitely the detail. So when you want something, whether if it's you're doing some sort of food products and you really want to just show the details of that, or you got something, or maybe you're doing a wedding, you really want to emphasize the beauty of a ring. This is that. Or maybe you're shooting a music video and you want to just really make a model just go, damn. This is that lens. This is the lens. Now, again, it's very detailed. However, so unless you're going to stop down to say a T8, and you got the light for a T8 scene, you're not really going to be using this in terms of a lot of movement. But I would still use this. Like, I will stop down to either a T8 or even maybe go to a 5.6, and with the right lighting, I can still probably use this as a close-up shot to get that emotional reaction from like an interview from a talking head. The compression is so amazing. But this is going to conclude my video on topics of lenses, as well as talking about the Irix. All right, Car. Thank you. So this is going to conclude my video on topic of lenses, and specifically the Irix Cine lenses. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure once again to leave a like and leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys thought of both, either the Irix or lenses. What are some of your favorite lenses, and what makes them so unique that you love them? Leave your comment below, and if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button, because I would love to hear from you. And until next time, take care, everyone.